I'd like to say Mark Lawrenson is with us to talk to us about the Republic of Ireland situation and where we go from here. Mark, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm all good, thank you.
There's a big debate about the future of the Republic of Ireland football team and the FAI and all that kind of stuff. From your perspective, let's talk about the football first. Are you seeing any positive signs at the moment about what we're trying to do and how we're getting there?
I think you'd have to say that there's a slight improvement. I think we can all understand, people who've been involved in football, what Stephen Kenny's trying to do. But the bottom line, like anything, is results. And I don't know, in terms of the FAI, grassroots, etc., are they piling loads of money into that? Are they, in terms of improving the coaching, hopefully trying to make, for whatever better description, better players come through? So it's a really, really difficult one with Stephen Kenny, because in any other job, you would say, certainly in a club job, he would have lost his job. I understand the patience, but there comes a time where you have to make a decision, which is, we need to start winning some games. We need to start qualifying for competitions, because otherwise, in terms of revenue, we're not really going to have very much.
I think the short answer, and without going into too much detail, is that we haven't been piling massive amounts of money into grassroots. That, like, obviously the FAI has its fairly well publicised financial issues over the last, we essentially needed a bailout from the government to keep going.
Sure.
So we haven't had a huge injection of cash, and those young players, there's a kind of big gap between the players who are kind of 28, 29 and the 20, 22-year-olds who are coming through at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about that as well is we're playing at times relatively untried players, untried at the clubs, not just at an international level, which is obviously in the majority of cases a step up. So that's always going to be difficult. You will have one or two who just kind of sail through it and they look like they've been playing international football for a long time. But there aren't many. And, I think the biggest topic of all about the team when you see the team playing is, where are we getting goals from? Well, we're not really, are we? We're kind of nicking goals as well from games. I thought we were good against Portugal, although, of course, the bottom line with that is, you get 1-0 up with relatively little, a few minutes to go, and you end up getting beat 2-1. So there's a little bit of worry about concentration. But look, we're obviously not going to qualify, as everybody knows. It's very, very difficult to know what to do. And then if you say, well, let's change the manager, who do you get? What was our last two? Martin O'Neill, Mick McCarthy as well. And while you wouldn't say the football was fab, at least we were winning games and occasionally qualifying for stuff. So it's just a really, really difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah, like, the thing is, I suppose neither of those two managers qualified for a World Cup, and that's what we're talking about here. So, like, do you believe that there can be enough of an uptick that when it comes to the next Euros qualification, which, as you say, in fairness, Mick got relatively close, I guess, but I mean, if there had been an extra win against Georgia, maybe there wouldn't have been a playoff required, or
sure.
From Martin O'Neill's perspective, obviously he managed to get Ireland to a tournament. So do you believe that over a period of time that there can be an uptick enough for at least the Euros qualification to be a reality?
Looking at the players and the quality of players we've got at the moment, no. I just don't see it. And lots of the smaller nations, when you look at them, they are all improving, and we aren't. We're not really even standing still. If anything, we've started to go a little bit backward. And I know lots of players have been given the debuts under Stephen Kenny, etc. And you've got to give these lads time. But you just look at us and we just look like an average team. We're very difficult to play against. We work extremely hard. There's no problem with the work ethic or anything. We haven't got a goal scorer, have we, which is the biggest thing in football, as everybody knows. But we don't create too many opportunities either. Defensively, we're quite sound, quite solid, organised. But, anyone can kind of organise a football team to be difficult to beat, to be honest with you, within reason.
the contenders at the moment that we're seeing are the names that are being mentioned as opposed to contenders, because we don't know. So Robbie Keane is named, Roy Keane is named, Damien Duff has been named, Lee Carsley has been named, although I'm not sure if anybody's
He's not coming now, is he?
Well, that's the thing, right? So our Big Sam is the other one, and
it's always Big Sam, isn't it?
yeah. What do you think? What do you think of that list? Because
no. Oh, sorry, the list. Yeah, I can understand, but then relatively unproven, isn't it? It's not so. It's just such a difficult one. I mean, now Big Sam's a firefighter, isn't he? That's the basis of him getting the shout. Roy's obviously had jobs, etc. But it's just Robbie Keane. He's been coaching, as we know, but actually taking over is really, really difficult. And the other thing about it as well is if, say you are Robbie Keane and you do want to manage, I think the clever thing, if possible, is to pick the right time to manage. He'll be looking at us thinking, oh, I'm not sure. Let's wait another couple of years and might get some better players through, and then I can have a real good go at it. So that's do you stick or do you twist? That's the problem, isn't it? Would Roy Keane take it? I don't probably think that he would. No. Would he improve performances? Arguably, initially, yeah. Would he improve performances enough to win games? Probably not. And therein lies the problem again.
And that's an interesting kind of topic about winning these games and which ones now need to be of top priority. Because you mentioned in the context of Big Sam there that he's a firefighter. And that makes sense if you are in the lower reaches of the Premier League. You are literally fighting for your existence and you can't afford to keep losing games and go down. Maybe a very strange point to make, Mark, but is there a sense of, after they lost the first two games in this, that this is free hit territory for Stephen Kenny? I mean, they're not going to get relegated from their World Cup qualification group, obviously. The only thing that could have been worth anything is the top two places. So are they in free hit territory? Are they in a place where actually there is no firefighting that legitimately needs to be done in the short term, and we can take a really long-term view of this thing?
Yeah, we can, but obviously that depends on the bodies in FAI, but yeah, it is. It always has been. It was like the Portugal away game was really a free hit, and then you see the problem. I think when you see our results, our last two results, therein lies the real problem, which is you come up with a good performance, which I think everybody agreed with in Portugal. One or two people, I think, went over the top and said it was an outstanding performance. I didn't particularly agree with that. It was a good performance. And don't forget that, obviously, Portugal missed a penalty in the first half, which would have changed not the result of the game, but completely the way that the game was then going to be played out. So, and then our problem is we come home and against what we think is a lesser team, and we struggle. So that's the problem. So you've got one decent game and then one game where we just weren't good enough in most areas of the pitch. It is a free hit, but the problem is it's, free hit after free hit, but we're not getting any points. That's the other thing. So what we're saying is when it's a free hit and maybe players don't feel quite as tense because it is a free hit, we're not playing particularly well.
One of the difficulties that is going to face Irish football over the next couple of years in particular is that our best young players aren't going to be scouted by English clubs as a result of, they're going to have European passports, and it's Brexit related. So not until they're 18 will they essentially be able to go over. I'm sure there'll be some workarounds for some of the absolute young superstars who English clubs decide that they want to bring the whole family over and relocate. And that will continue to happen. It's already happening a bit. But the majority of the young players won't be coming over. And the FA has never really invested enough in the league to make sure that the League of Ireland was of sufficient standard. There was a stat doing the round that Azerbaijan has way more academy coaches than we do. I guess what I'm asking here, is it actually time for us to reconsider where our place in the pecking order in world football is and be realistic about it so that we can have a long-term plan and a long-term approach, as opposed to automatically assuming that we're going to beat Azerbaijan and we're going to beat Luxembourg, football countries who maybe have got their house in order that we haven't.
Well, they have, haven't they? Because the old Luxembourg way was nearly a 4 or 5-0 win. I know occasionally teams would struggle. I think did we beat them 1-0? I can't remember whenever it was. But yeah, definitely we've almost been. It's almost been like a class thing. Well, they're no good. We're miles better than them. They as you said, they've come on leaps and bounds. I didn't know about how many coaches, etc. Azerbaijan had and all those kind of things. When you look at us and think, well, what are we doing? You say there's a lack of money. There's obviously been kind of internal problems as well at the FAI. It's time for somebody. Somebody needs to be a little bit brave, stick their head above the parapet, and say, right, this is what we are going to do. And we're going to start to build. It's the only thing we can do, and we know there's talent. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And maybe Brexit, as you rightly say, it's going to help us in that degree. But I certainly think if you're a whiz kid playing in Ireland and you're 16, Premier League teams, as you say, will just bring the whole family over, lock, stock, and barrel, give their mum and dad a job and all that kind of stuff. So. But at least we've got to try and do something, because it's just not working. And as everybody knows, you can't transfer players in. You can't go and sign a centre forward. So we've got to get on with it. But you're right. I mean, I'm going on a little bit, but you're right insofar as it's right. Let's stop and go, right. Where exactly are we going? What exactly are we doing? And surely now, if we start to try and build, it cannot be any worse.
That's the thing, that like some kind of long-term plan that everybody has agreement and is bought into, and then if the national team manager isn't performing or is making mistakes, you go, okay, we're going to get somebody else to do that, but it's part of this overall plan. That's why it feels like getting a Big Sam in, or even a Neil Lennon, is kind of outside of that whole plan. They're not familiar with the way that football in the country is being run or being played, or interested at all. And it feels like what the FA have done is that they've made the English football team part of English football culture. It took a long time, but they got there.
Yeah.
And they got there a bit by accident, because they had Big Sam, and but for the pint of wine, he might still be there.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, Capello, Roy Hodgson, etc. Remember Roy Hodgson with England in the World Cup in, where were we? Brazil. They lost the first 2 games. They were the first team to actually go out. And as you know, I mean, with the English press as well, I mean, it was like, get rid of him, get him out. He's no good. He can't do this and he can't do that. And I think eventually somebody at the FA, they've sat down and gone, right, this is what we're going to do. And I mean, you might say that Gareth Southgate, to some degree, was quite fortunate to get the job, but he was in charge of the under-21s. He's bright and he's intelligent, and he's done a decent job so far with England. I mean, the thing with England is they always get carried away, as you know, the journos, the tabloids, everything. You win a couple of games and football's coming home and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they played every game at home in the Euros apart from one, so they should have at the very least been in the semis. And we know they got to the final. But yeah, I think somebody's got to take a kind of overall view and say, right, stop. Let's have a real rethink about what we're trying to do, what we intend to do. Thing is, we cannot be any worse, can we? We cannot be any worse. But I don't know who's going to do it. I don't even know in terms of coaching, etc., tactically, whatever at the FAI. I don't even know who's in charge of that. I mean, that's my own ignorance. But
the coaching ticket and the technical director and like technically it's all supposed to fall under there's a kind of dual structure where the international senior management and the technical director are kind of supposed to work in tandem, and that's supposed to go through the system, and like there are a bunch of young players coming through. Our underage teams are doing quite well, and people keep making the point that you could have had 3 of the starters at the weekend for the senior team could actually still be playing for the under-21 team, and they could have gone to a tournament. So there's definitely a conversation to be had about that. A texter wants me to ask you about Chris Huden. Is it possible that... So Chris obviously has a job at the moment, although it's not going great for him.
No.
He might be available sooner rather than later. Would he be somebody who could immediately step into the international setup and improve results?
Improve results. I don't know. The answer to that is because he's still got the same players, and would he make that much of a difference? I mean, obviously, know Chrissy really well and played with him, and I think he'd be one who I would say to the FAI, let him come in and let him just reorganise anything. I'm not sure about improving the results. So you get straight away, you get an improvement because you've got a new manager and everybody's trying to impress him, etc. Still got the same problem. We can't score any goals, literally speaking. So, but I would. If somebody said to me, would you say to Chris, would you come and actually run the whole football department of the FAI? Don't forget about the politics and all those kind of stuff. But give us a master plan. Give us a plan for a year, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years. Somebody like Chris Houghton for me would be excellent. Really seriously would. He's a deep thinker about the game. He's a good communicator as well. And he's a very moderate man insofar as, when he had success at Newcastle and stuff like that. And I saw a couple of games and go and have a beer with him in the office. And I say, are you doing well? He said, yeah, well, we're doing well at the moment. He said, but you know what football's like. So he's very temperate in that degree. And I think he would be really, really good. Do I think the FAI would do something like that? I'd probably argue no at the moment, because I don't think particularly they're thinking about 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years down the line. I think everything is immediate there with what I kind of see coming out of it.
Just on kind of some of the minutiae of Saturday night, Mark, like the goal that Ireland concede is obviously a pretty terrible lapse from those at the back, not coming out to close down a man who's clearly going to shoot is pretty poor. There are balls being passed out of play in the second half. There are opportunities being missed in front of goal, wrong options being taken at times. Can a new manager change those lapses immediately, do you think?
Well, you might get an immediate reaction for 2 or 3 games, and then I think they have a saying in football that players revert to type. So, and you just never know with players, and in the split second when they make their decisions, whether they're right or whether they're wrong. I wasn't surprised by that result after Portugal, because I think it was one of those, every effort went into getting some kind of result in Portugal, and there's always going to be a come down. And I honestly, in international football, I think at the moment it's easier to play away from home than it is at home, because especially with us when we play at home, we have to basically set the tempo for the game. And just looking at the players that we've got, we're actually better suited just to sit in and make it really, really difficult. But if that's the height of what you're trying to do, we're not going anywhere, are we?
No, we definitely need some ambition. Kenny would argue at least that he wants the players to be comfortable on the ball, and that it's going to take time, and that he is. I
get that. I absolutely get that. And to be fair to Stephen Kenny, he's trying to do what he set out to do, but not if you've got one person who's not comfortable on the ball, it can't work. And the other thing as well is, and as we said before, is you can't then draft people in like you could transfer them in regular football, because it's just impossible. So there comes a time where, and everybody's got this way about, the way that they want to play if they want to manage. But again, without the players, it's almost impossible. And you've got to win games. You have to win games. That is the bottom line. But if then we decide, right, you know what, we're having maybe 18 months where this whole thing, we're going to change it completely. And we might have some even poorer results, possibly. But just hang on in there with us, because this is what we think we want to do. Well, this is what we want to do. And we think eventually it will improve. And then you can get your younger age teams playing in a similar way if, and that's probably the biggest if, you've got the quality of players. But if you say to me that younger age players coming through looks like they're going to be some decent players, well, maybe now's the time to do it. Strike while the iron's hot.
As opposed to trying to get a Big Sam or a Neil Lennon or even Roy Keane.
Yeah. I mean, and Lenny and all them, and Roy, they probably improved us straight away, but ultimately, would we be qualifying for anything? I don't think so, because we've still got the same old problem, which is, the hardest thing in the game is to put the ball in the back of the net, and we don't have a Robert Keane, Niall, all the players I played with, Stapleton, Aldridge, all those boys. We just don't have those kind of players, I'm afraid.
Mark, good to have you with us this morning. Cheers.
No worries.
Good stuff. That's Mark Lawrenson giving us his thoughts there after the Azerbaijan game and ahead of Serbia tomorrow. That game live on Off the Ball. It is Stewie Byrne alongside Stephen Doyle on commentary duty tomorrow evening for that game as well. So we've brought you those three games. The high of the halftime pitter patter, the inspirational first half commentary that Des Bishop was Instagramming about. Since then, it's not been that much crack. Fair to say.
Fair to say that, all right. The first 6 minutes of Azerbaijan is something that they can never take away from us.
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Yes, Kenny should be given a contract to the 2024 Euros and he can just get on with it without the sword hanging over him. Why is Gilroy only clued in on the crisis now that Kenny is in charge, says Will. When Mick was there was never any mention of the quality of players, just Mick's style of play. Why has he only copped it now? If Mick had been getting these results, Ger would have been screaming every morning about the need to get rid of him. Look, the results haven't really changed, have they? Mick was obviously a much better manager. We were absolutely in playoffs on the basis of our qualifying campaign, or on the basis of the fact that in the Nations League everybody got a playoff.
Yeah, and I was actually just trying to kind of think out loud there, and I was chatting to Mark there. It was based on the Nations League, yeah.
Stephen Kenny's a way better man for the job than those four. Ireland does not have the players. Let him build something. I've been living in Asia for the last 5 years and getting up at all hours to watch some truly awful football, says 32 Fogman from the national team. Results are not great now, but the football is at least palatable. It is such a fine margin between everybody waking up happy about life and a 2-1 win against Azerbaijan, 2-1 come from behind win, versus this is all a disaster, isn't it? What's the even-tempered response to this? What's the long-term? Let's plunge ourselves into crisis. Let's get Neil Lennon in and see what happens. Is that really going to solve things? Is that going to bring a sponsor? Maybe Sports Direct roll in behind Neil Lennon. That's exactly what happens there.
And maybe those people who are saying that this is all a disaster and we need to bring Neil Lennon in now are right. And maybe the new FAI will never be the new FAI. And maybe the grassroots systems in Ireland will never be fixed. Maybe there is never any intention of that ever happening, and they will always be very independent things, the national team and the grassroots system, and the grassroots system will never be able to provide for the national team, and we will continue to export, and it'll actually just be a case of families moving to Britain instead of just individual kids.
Or Spain, or Italy.
Or maybe they just move to the EU and things go on the way they've always gone on, and maybe then Neil Lennon is your guy.